What's next for the Select Committee investigating January 6th is where we begin this hour with the aforementioned Congressman Adam Schiff, a member of the new House Select Committee on the January 6th attack. He's also the chairman of the Intelligence Committee and was the lead impeachment manager during Trump's first impeachment trial. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to ask you, having investigated misconduct by the ex-president, how this investigation of an event that includes the ex-president will differ in scope. And I wonder, just a second part of it, if you can speak to the ongoing threat of domestic violent extremism animated by the big lie of election fraud.
Sure. Well, in terms of how it will differ in scope, it's a little difficult to answer because that investigation of the first impeachment was pretty sprawling, given that involved a country half a world away, Ukraine. The events of January 6th, though, don't just rely on what happened on that one day. You had weeks and indeed months leading up to that date that we need to examine. Of course, why we were so ill prepared on that date, the intelligence that we had or didn't have, what was shared or wasn't shared. And most important, what do we do going forward to protect ourselves? One big difference, though, I can tell you is we had to fight the Trump administration to get a single document. They sought to stonewall all of our subpoenas. We'll now be working with an administration that will be much more forthcoming, and that will make a world of difference in terms of getting answers.
Congressman, we seek to sort of fill in our gaps of our understanding. I mean, I think there are some open questions about who is effectively the country's commander-in-chief. There's new reporting that it was Mike Pence who called the National Guard and urged them to come. There are obviously big gaps in our understanding of why the National Guard was loaded onto buses and then never deployed. There are big gaps in whether or not members of the Republican Party, your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, were in contact, communication, giving any sort of tours or information. Is all that pieces of this sort of empty puzzle that you're hoping to answer?
Absolutely. Those are just the kind of questions we want to answer. I would start out, and we've been looking at this for weeks in the Intelligence Committee. We still don't have a good sense of what intelligence was in the possession of agencies. That is, how much did we know before January 6th that the Capitol might be a target? And what did we share of that information, and what more was out there to be had? Those are some of the questions leading up to that date, but also what was the organization of that event like, and how much forewarning was there of violence among those who were organizing it? How much foreknowledge was there in the White House that this might turn violent? What happened on the day of the insurrection? Why did it take so long to get reinforcements to the Capitol? Was there anyone standing in the way of sending those reinforcements? So these are just some of the questions, and I think we're all determined, those of us that have been appointed so far, to follow the evidence wherever it leads. If it leads to some of our colleagues, it leads to some of our colleagues, but we can't blind ourselves to the reality.
It seems to me that people take some of the wrong lessons in drawing parallels to the Benghazi committee. I mean, one of the powers was the subpoena power, the ability to get, as you said, reams and reams of emails, obviously most famously from the State Department and other places. But I wonder if you have thought about when the first subpoenas will go out and whether there's a desire to get right to work immediately.
Well, I served on that Benghazi Select Committee, and I used to like to say the only thing that I found worthwhile about that was getting to know Elijah Cummings. I hope that we and expect we'll have a very different experience with this Select Committee. That was set up for a very particular purpose of Kevin McCarthy, to take down Hillary Clinton's numbers. It also took place after there were half a dozen very bipartisan investigations already into the matter that had debunked the same conspiracy theories. Here, we really are going to do our very best to operate in a nonpartisan way. We'll see what Kevin McCarthy does, whether he appoints people, what kind of people he wants to appoint. But we want to make sure that we use that subpoena power wisely to get the information that we need. That power of compulsion will be very important. We've had difficulty, frankly, getting information about the intelligence, even though we provide the budget for the intelligence agencies, and we have suggested that we will withhold some of that budget unless we get what we need. But having that Select Committee with the particular focus, the gravitas, the professional staff will help us get those answers.
The Capitol Police have become the face of really feeling betrayed by Republicans who refused to award medals. About 21 of them refused to sign on to an award for them. But then, even more substantively at the policy level, refusing to move forward with the bipartisan commission outside of Congress. But it seems that there are still questions about what they knew and whether any of the, I believe there were more than 30 Capitol police officers suspended in the days and weeks after. Are there still a body of questions there, or have the congressional committees answered most of them?
No, there's still, I think, a great many questions. I think about, and we're already talking about our first hearing. One of the Capitol Police officers who raised that question after being the subject of racial epithets as he's defending the Capitol, is this America? That question is really at the heart of this enterprise, at the heart of this Select Committee investigation. It gets to the point you were making about the domestic terrorism threat, which is now the predominant threat to the country and exceeds the threat of international terror. So we want to hear from those police officers. They do feel that they have been not only victimized on that day, but let down by our GOP colleagues. They should have an opportunity to speak out, to tell the American people what they went through. But we also want to learn how they were trained by their department, how they were treated by their department. The House Administration Committee has made a lot of progress into some of the immediate questions about how that department may need to be restructured. And as Chairwoman Lofgren said, we may need to build that part of the plane while we're flying it. But yes, there are a tremendous number of unanswered questions.
I want to ask you what is to be learned about the ex-president's role. I don't know if you've seen the video. There's some video of him at his own rally, his family backstage, clearly enjoying the fervor that the supporters felt in and around his event, which was the warm-up event for the insurrection. His comments that he would join them to march to the Capitol were obviously made in public. And then there's been a lot of investigative journalism that has made clear that he sat and watched the insurrection transfixed. His first video, he said, "I love you," to the insurrectionists, 500 of whom have been charged with crimes. What are the questions you still have about the president's conduct that day?
Well, we know really very little about his conduct. We know what you've described, that we've seen publicly from that video in terms of his public-facing role at that rally on the Mall. But what was going on in the White House, what the reasons were behind the delay in the deployment of the National Guard, whether he had any role in that or he didn't have any role in that, we really don't know. And among the most important questions for me is, was there any warning given to the president about the violence that may ensue? There's been public reporting about that. Was the president on advance notice of who some of these extreme elements were that were going to be gathering there? Was there any concern about any of the rhetoric that might be used in light of who was attending? These are open questions, but I think they need to be answered. I think the House managers during the second impeachment did a remarkable job, but they had a very short time to try to assemble the evidence of what role the White House played or didn't play. We certainly know he incited this attack, but there's a lot we don't know about his particular role.
You've been so generous with your time. I have one more question. It's about sort of the spirit with which Democrats move forward. It seems to me that what has been bipartisan was the vote to impeach the ex-president. Even the vote to convict the ex-president was bipartisan. The vote for the bipartisan commission in the House was bipartisan. And there were even some Republicans in the Senate who voted for it. The only thing that's been partisan is the Republican obstruction. Will you fight aggressively against the perception that the Select Committee is some partisan endeavor? That feels like it's already sinking in on the right. And I wonder how you'll go around that disinformation to make sure that this investigation is sort of experienced directly by the American people, that they're able to see the testimony. Would you put some of these hearings in prime time, for example?
Yes, I think that's very much the plan, is to have a portion of our work product very much out in the open so people can see what we're doing. We won't be able to do all of it that way. There just wouldn't be time to do everything in public, and there may be some things that we need to do, particularly if they involve intelligence issues that can't be public. But we want to do everything we can to give the public confidence in what we're doing. Look, we can only control what we do. We're going to try to do a very nonpartisan, objective job. They obviously don't want that. McCarthy doesn't want that. If he did, he would have supported the commission that was 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, neither of which could issue a single subpoena without the other. They don't want that.
Right.
But the fact that they're abdicating their duty to the Constitution doesn't give us the right to abdicate ours. So we go forward. But, I would fully expect on the far right, they will attack it as partisan. But then they attacked the original commission that was 5-5 the same way. So that I view that as just one of the obstacles to overcome, and we will have to overcome it.
And if anyone is used to that, you are. Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much for spending some time with us and starting us off this hour. We really appreciate it.